My name's Tracy West. I'm a trustee of Nacoa, and I have been for rolling up to 10 years. I lost my mother coming up to a decade ago, and shortly after she left this mortal coil, I found myself sitting in front of the computer saying, "Child of alcoholic!" And up popped Nacoa, a charity I'd never ever heard of. And I just thought, who are you then? And why weren't you there? Because my mother actually died on my 40th birthday or Mother's Day. One of the two. Yes, that was nice. My 40th birthday was the Saturday, Mother's Day was the Sunday. And she lay dead for a week before she was found. She'd wrapped herself in a standard bubble of isolation, as many alcohol dependents do. And despite the fact that I'd tried for many, many years to parent my parent, she chose her path. And I just did all I could to prevent her from killing anybody, actually, at the end, because that's really all I could do. That's all I could control. In my mind, I thought I was controlling that much, but of course I wasn't. You can't control anything. A dependent has their path to walk, and a child of an alcohol dependent has a very difficult one to walk alongside them. When I found out about Nacoa, I dropped a note to Hilary. I had no idea what I was going to write, and I just said, look, I do stuff with, I write things. If it's any good to you, I knew some people in the papers, or I need some media people. If that's any use to you, just tell me to do something and I'll do something. I had no idea what to offer, or what I could do with all of the stuff that had gone on. Because you don't know what to do with the stuff that's gone on. What I found is that people generally go one of two ways. They'll go this way, or they'll go this way. No one ever kind of goes down a nice middle path. So you go down and you bury all the stuff with them, or you kind of rise up somehow and you become an extraordinary human being in some way or other. You either speak, or you write, or you do something. You're a poet, or you run marathons, or you swim across the water. You do something because you feel that to not do something just is quite mad, really. You've survived their addiction, therefore you really should do something with it. So I decided to offer my services to do a bit of writing here and there, and here I am, rolling up to my 50th birthday. I'm thinking, good grief, where did that decade go? And during that decade, I've done nothing. As a trustee, I've been a trustee for, I think, about 9 years or 8 years or thereabouts. I was asked to become a trustee. And I'm so proud to hold that role as a volunteer. And it really has been the most amazing recovery for me, being a COA, being part of Nacoa. Nacoa to me is family. I barely know a handful of faces in this room that I can point out and wave to that I know really well. But actually, I feel like everybody in this room is part of my family. In some way or other, you've all been touched by the same thing that I have, and that our wonderful guest speaker has as well. And I absolutely know that by the time we leave this evening, tissues will be dampened, and hearts will have swollen, and our energies will have been boosted to get through our next day, and our day beyond, and our day beyond, and our next 10 years. And all the times that we have to deal with things, we can draw upon this and decant a little something from this evening. So there's always a chink of light. And that has been my philosophy, I think, really, from all of the darkness of my mother. And there's been so much, and I'm sure so many of you have so many stories. We're all tiny grains of sand on a very special beach. But decant the memory of tonight, and it will keep you warm when you need it. And now I will hand over to our lovely guest speaker for the evening. And of course, welcome Hilary Henriquez up to the front table. Thank you.
It's been an amazing week, as lots of you all know, with lots of coverage in the media. And we think our time has come, don't we, Liam? We think somehow or another, suddenly, all of us who have been hidden for so many years, I think you're all here, actually, which is marvellous. Welcome to COA Week, and welcome to this year's David Stafford Memorial Lecture. It is hard to know how to introduce Liam because he's done so many things. But I have to say, Liam introduced himself to me with one of his famous handwritten notes. But this one didn't say, the coffers are dry. This one said, I want to help you. Is there anything I can do to help children of alcoholics? And what a letter. And then suddenly, everything started to happen. It's really hard to know how to thank him, and I hope the words thank you are enough. But he's taken my world, our world, by storm. And, we've been going for 25 years. And this is the first time, really, where mainstream media have been interested and have listened to what we've got to say. I know that David Stafford, who we are here to honour tonight, would love you. His all too short life was taken when he was actually chair of this charity. We started the charity together with 3 other people. And it's really interesting. His family, lots of his family are here. I can't see them. Thank you, there you are. And it's just such a pleasure and an honour, I think, for Liam to deliver this lecture. And as I say, I worked with David. I know that he would love you too, and I know he would be thanking you the way I am. I'm not going to talk very long because I know you want to hear Liam, but I'd just like to pay tribute also to one of our trustees who died suddenly in December. His name was Simon Ward. And he gave 23 years of very wise counsel and was always the voice of reason in what is often a disparate group of trustees. We're very well represented, but my gosh, do we have some fun and lots of things. But I know that Simon, again, would be pleased, and I know it for sure because, and I'm going to read this, the last conversation we had, Simon and I, was about you. And he wrote to me and said, it really is outstanding to attract the interest of a political heavyweight like Liam. There will be all sorts of ways in which he might help. I wonder if he might consider setting up and chairing an all-party group to further the interests of COAs. And most of you know that's what happened last Monday. So I know that Simon, wherever he is also thanking you, Liam. Liam came to our gala, which was wonderful, in November, and he thanked me for all the children that I'd helped. And being a COA at heart, I still have a problem with self-esteem, there's no doubt about that. And I was sitting there looking at him, looking at me, and thinking, it's a line from Evita, and the line is, I am undeserving of this attention. And then I thought on, the rest of the line is, unless we all are, I think we all are. And we all are deserving of this attention. There's no doubt about that. And with Liam's help, we really have given more attention in 5 short months than 25 years. So thank you for finding us, and welcome tonight.
Hilary, thank you for that. Thank you for making this as easy as possible. Gosh, there's just so many of you. A huge welcome to everyone to the Houses of Parliament, in particular to David's family. And a huge thank you to Nacoa for bringing us together. It's not often that we get together like this. In fact, we've never got together like this before. But I'm determined that every time we do get together like this, we start with a message, actually, to Hilary and to her team, to the trustees, for every child you've helped, for every life you've changed, and for every life you've saved. From the bottom of our heart, we say thank you. We're here today to mark a week when, around the world, we raise a flag for children of alcoholics. The innocent victims of booze who never ask for the pain that they suffer, who too often suffer alone and too often suffer in silence. This week, we stand together as an international community to say to each other and to every child of a hazardous drinker, you are not alone. And together we are going to break the silence, and together we are going to try and break the cycle of this vicious disease. Now, Hilary is right to say that this year is a milestone for Nacoa. It's the 25th anniversary of its creation, and it seems to me just very appropriate that we meet together here in the Palace of Westminster, the heart of power in our country, to remember a man without whom we might not be here at all. I never had the privilege of meeting David Stafford, but I've read his book and I've admired his work. And it was David, together with Maya Parker, Diana Samways, Valerie McGee and Hilary, who turned some very early beginnings at the St Joseph Centre for Addiction into the charity we know today. Now, like my grandfather, David was born in Dublin. He was a psychotherapist, he was a researcher, he was an author, he was a man of many parts, but above all, he was a man who was passionate to help those children growing up in families scarred by addiction. And he gave hope to those in pain, and he gave the last decade of his life to championing their cause. He was, as Hilary said, the first chair, I believe, of Nacoa's trustees, and he was taken from us tragically young on the 29th of September 1997. So David, I don't know where you're watching from tonight, but I hope that you can see tonight how many people owe you so much and how grateful we are for the inspiration of your example, especially me. Because it was nearly a year ago, together with my brothers who are here with me tonight, that I was called back to the town where I grew up to be with my father in the last days of his life. And I count myself as one of the lucky ones because I got to treasure forever the kindness and the calm and the compassion of a very young locum doctor who wasn't on strike that night, and the nurses of the Princess Alexandra Hospital who stayed with us as a family in that long dark night and through the cold grey dawn of St Joseph's Day, Father's Day. They were with us folding down the blankets so that we could hold our Dad's hand as he slipped away. And I remember thinking so clearly, finally he's in a place where no one can hurt him and where he can no longer hurt himself. And it was in the hard months that followed that Nacoa was really the place that gave me the strength and the sense, I suppose, to try and understand my life as the child of an alcoholic. To understand that the things I grew up with were the things that every child of an alcoholic gets to learn all about. The insecurity and the shame, the worry and the guilt, that drive for perfectionism that many people who have worked with me get to know all too well, an instinct to try and create order where you found none, the worries and the habit of building armour plating and never taking it off. We all know it all too well. And in the months that followed since I first told that story about my dad and my own experience, that man that I loved and lost, I've just been overwhelmed by the response. Now, as some of you know, my dad was an extraordinary man. He was the son of Irish immigrants. He was the first in his family to go to university. And the first quote that he ever taught me, first quote by a politician actually that he ever taught me, was Kennedy's great line that you shouldn't ask what your country can do for you. You should ask what you can do for your country. And he taught me that because he was a child of the 60s, and it was that sense of idealism that had actually inspired him to give a career in public service. He loved new towns, and that's where we grew up, in the new town of Harlow. He loved that sense of practical idealism, the notion that you could create a model community of new jobs and new homes. And when he became general manager of Harlow Council, that was the vision that he took to work every day. And he took to work every day a warmth and an enthusiasm and a charisma. But as he rose up the ranks, his dependence on alcohol deepened. And when we lost my mum to cancer when she was just 52, it tipped him over the edge. And I remember him saying it was a direct hit. And his slow slide into the abyss just got faster and faster. And now, I really struggled for a long time with whether I could or whether I should speak out. And it was actually something, Hilary, you said to me that really, that nearly knocked me back and was actually nearly the thing that stopped me saying anything more. And what Hilary said to me in Bristol when I just sort of marched into her office sometime last summer, she said, the problem with being the child of an alcoholic is that you don't own the problem. The problem, as it were, belongs to someone else. And that really did nearly stop me in my tracks. And I struggled with the idea for a long time that somehow I might be dishonouring my dad by speaking up about the struggles that we'd had as a family. And it's why I've always tried my best to try and create a full picture of him and his life and his enthusiasm, but also the challenges that he faced. But this was the clincher for me. My dad was the child of an alcoholic too. And so the conclusion I reached is that I had to honour the boy who became the man, who became the dad that I loved and lost. And I suspect that just like me, years before me, he got to know about all the feelings that we get to learn about. The things that I started to learn from about the age of 6 or 7. And they're the sort of stories that people have been incredibly generous in sharing with me in the months since I first spoke out. And many of the stories have been hard to hear. And they're hard to hear because you recognise the verses so well. Lots of people describe to me alcoholic parents who were functioning, who looked to the outside world like they were normal, and not like the drunk on the bench. They're the people who, when everyone looked at them, it looked as if they were, just fine. Lots of people describe the loneliness. Someone said to me, we had family and friends that dreaded coming over, and in time we just lost confidence in ourselves and began to feel very alone. Some people talked to me about the way in which they'd ended up hurting themselves. One person said to me, I just didn't know where to turn. And ultimately, I took my sadness, fear and anxiety out on myself. Some describe abuse and some describe violence. Others describe the moment their mum or their dad hurt others, like the guy who wrote to me to say, give me a story about his dad who, drink driving, had just driven into a house and had desperately hurt other people. Others just describe that special occasion, like birthdays or Christmas, that were more crisis than celebration. Lots describe parents who passed away early, and lots describe scars, I'm afraid, that last for a lifetime. One man, who was nearly 70, said to me that his dad had died 22 years ago. And somehow, he said, I just couldn't forgive him for spoiling my adolescence. And all of these stories serve to really underline the point that I want to make tonight. which is that many of us here, I'm certainly one of them, we're not anti-drinking, but we are anti-drinking too much, especially when the innocent victims are children. But these are the stories that people need to hear about, and which I'm really happy that our partners in the media have helped us tell over the last few weeks. I just think that if we can break the silence, if we can begin to end the stigma, if we can begin to end the shame around alcohol addiction, then we can make it easier for people struggling with alcoholism to reach for help, and we can help break the cycle of this disease for the 2.5 million children who right now live through their own private hell on earth. Many of those who have been in touch with me, they described the kind of help that they've received from Nacoa, from AA, from Alateen and from Al-Anon. These are organisations that just make the most extraordinary difference to our country. And last week, I'm proud to say that MPs and peers in this place joined the team. Last Monday, we launched the all-party parliamentary group of children of alcoholics. You would not believe how many children of alcoholics there are in this place. For the last few months, everywhere I've gone in this place, whether it's on email, the tea room, through the voting lobbies, people have stopped me, grabbed my arm and said, "Me too." There was one colleague of mine who I've known ever since I've been here, 11 years, who, while we were voting, went through pretty much his life story. And I said to him, "Look, at some point you should tell this story to the wider world." And, we hadn't even gone through the lobbies and voted, and he said to me, you now know more about it than anyone else on earth." That's why we think, this group can tell the difference, because we can use this platform of Parliament to actually send a message that this agony, this epidemic of agony, is in every part of our country. And that's why I'm proud of the priorities that we set out last week. Our goal is to make a difference, and I think that the ideas that we've begun to offer would begin to make that difference, and heaven knows, change is needed. Last Monday we published groundbreaking research which reveals that public support for children of alcoholics in this country is frankly a shambles. No council could tell us that it has a strategy in place for children of alcoholics. Almost no council is increasing its budget for drug and substance abuse treatment, even though in most of the country the problem is getting worse. And we know it's getting worse because admissions for alcohol harm are not going down, they're going up. In fact, a third of councils, if you can believe this, are actually cutting their budgets. Referrals for treatment for alcohol abuse are all over the place. And I think that we just have to join together as a community and say, this is simply unacceptable. It is unacceptable because children of alcoholics are 3 times more likely to become alcoholics themselves. They are 3 times more likely to consider suicide, 5 times more likely to develop eating disorder. And look, alcohol harm already costs this country £21 billion a year. It is already the 3rd biggest public health risk in this country after obesity and smoking. There are already 1 million admissions a year to hospital because of alcohol abuse. Liver disease is already the 3rd most common cause of premature death in the UK, and it is the biggest risk factor for death for men under the age of 60. So that is why our all-party group is proposing some change. We think that it would make sense if there was more investment in helplines like Nacoa. We think that it would make sense if there was big public information campaigns, a bit like the smoking ads, aimed at parents who are drinking too much to make it clear to them the damage that they're doing to their children. And we think that it would make sense if there was a clear national strategy, a minister in charge, clear strategies in place in every council, with clear statistics, so that we know that the right treatment budgets are in place in every single part of this country. I don't think this is too much to ask, but I do think it would make the world of difference. And in particular, this last measure, just opening up the truth about what is actually going on, I think could make a huge difference, because in every community in our country, it would begin to open a debate in which we just had an adult conversation about this problem and asked ourselves searching questions about whether we as a community were doing enough in the streets where we live to help our neighbours. So to focus the minds of those in government, I'm today publishing the Children with Alcoholic Parents Support Bill. It is a simple proposal to change the law, to put a minister in charge with specific powers to coordinate health, social services and education, required to establish a national strategy to help children of alcoholics. This new law would put a new obligation on councils, the NHS and our schools in every part of the country to tell us about the scale of the challenge in every area, to tell us what people are doing, and to tell us as taxpayers what they are spending. I hope the government will embrace this, and I hope that you will feel free in lobbying your members of Parliament to argue for change and to give it their support. But these can only be the first steps, and I think over the months to come, as this debate grows here in Parliament, I think there's more that we should consider. There is obviously a need to put in place more research, not least into pinning down exactly what works. I do think we need a national league table so that we can see which councils are spending what and who is doing a good job and, frankly, who is not. I think the government should consider changing the law so that it becomes illegal for those under the age of 16 to drink at home. The only legislation we have in place dates back to the 1930s. And if the Scottish Government wins its case and puts in place plans for a minimum price for alcohol, I think the government should look at introducing this plan in England. So there's a lot that we can debate and a lot that we can argue for change over the months to come. Now, when I was honoured to speak at Nacoa's 25th anniversary in Bristol last year, I said that although I've not been in politics that long, there are a few things that I've learned about how we make change happen. And I suppose the biggest lesson I've learned is that every revolution in history starts with a few people in a room. And tonight, the people in the room are you and me. This is your place. This is your palace. This precinct, it belongs to you. I promised that we would take this fight to Parliament, and tonight you're here. Here your representatives are asked to speak with your voice, and so your job is to give them a script. Track them down, tell them your story, express your ambition that we do things differently in the years to come. Because although it doesn't feel like it, God knows I know children of alcoholics are amongst the strongest of us all. Our resilience is tried and tested and tortured over years of emotional pain. We couldn't fix things for our parents, but we can fix things for our children. That is the argument you need to make to the people who speak on behalf. And that is the note on which I want to end these remarks this evening. So in his book, which I can recommend, David Stafford wrote this. He said, "I would like you, the child of an alcoholic, to know that beyond the sea of despair and the aching pain of loss and emptiness is a land of hope, joy and fulfillment, and ultimately peace of mind." And David quoted a great line from Robert Louis Stevenson, which goes, "Life is not a matter of holding good cards, but of playing a bad hand well." And David was clear that recovery is a place we can all go, all get to, if we choose. And those are the stories of recovery and redemption that have inspired me most over the last few months. Because what stands out amidst the pain in the stories are the stories that I heard about people who were determined to change. There was one line that for me summed it all up, from a child of an alcoholic who is now a poet. And she's written a great book, and it's called Spirit Cracked, Not Broken. And that's the feeling I heard from so many people in so many stories. That sense that they have a spirit and they were determined for it never to break. They've built good lives. They've built strong families. And while the scars never faded, they broke the cycle of addiction from cascading down the generations. One mum said to me, "Our kids don't have to race home from school each night, terrified that they'll find us dead on the floor. They'll never have the guilt of feeling so utterly overwhelmed that they wish they were dead." And another mum wrote to me to tell me about the moment that she'd had to take the decision to take her 4-year-old child away from an alcoholic father. And she said she was the one who taught her daughter to ride a bike, supervised the revision, clapped the loudest at her graduation, and when she married, she put a picture of her dad in the bouquet. "Because we're survivors," she said, "and I instill in my daughter forgiveness. Our experience has made us the people that we are today." Our experience makes us the people that we are today. God knows this road is hard, but we have to keep on walking. God knows this road is long, but this journey is everything. And God knows this road, sometimes it feels awfully lonely. But in this week of all weeks, we get to remind each other that there are so many of us determined to make sure that they will never leave us, never leave us, never leave us alone. And that is the example that David Stafford left us, and for which we are truly thankful. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, I'll just make one observation really in conclusion, which is that ultimately this is a cultural battle, and if we can change the culture in this country, then that will be the true victory. And I know more about political change than I know about treating addiction. But the beginning of cultural change is to call something out that's been hidden in the dark for so long. And that's what we're doing now. And I just think that it's remarkable that, you know, we live in an age now where our potential is so much greater than it's ever been before. And yet for so many people, their power to make the most of that potential is so constrained, so damaged. And what we have to do as a country is we have to make it possible for everybody, no matter what family they were born in, to acquire the power to live out a life that is flourishing, that makes the most of that incredible potential that is opening up every day. And because of the experience that we had, we have a responsibility and a degree of obligation to campaign and to champion the cause of those who we know can flourish in a much bigger and better way in the years to come. And we didn't ask for that baton to be handed to us, but we've got it, and it's our job not to drop it.
Quite. Hilary, any closing words?
I'm just going to say on the funding front that
Yes.
we have a young man called Ben Brown who is running the London Marathon.
Yes, this wonderful chap. If you need to sponsor anybody, this man's running the marathon. I mean, really.
Please. And on the back of your sheets, which are on your chairs, I ask you to become a member, £25 a year, can't be bad. And it's surprising how collectively that works. It actually at the moment pays more than the rent for a year. Fabulous. So, if whatever you do will be gratefully received. But I would just like to end this evening, if that's okay, in thanking Byrne for everything that he's doing. And I told you, didn't I, when you were getting in the lift, you said something like, I'm glad we've met, or something like that. And I said, we all find our own tribe. And we do. And that was after sort of knowing you for about an hour. So welcome to the tribe. Yes. And thank you. And thank all of you for being part of that tribe too. So